Alright everyone, so we've been talking about using keyframing to assist us with our animation. So, if we need something to just move across the page and it doesn't have to change, like maybe you're animating the sun and the sun doesn't change, but it just moves across the page, or maybe something scales, but once again, it doesn't change frame to frame, keyframing can be very useful. Keyframing can also be used for animating something that is already being animated frame to frame. So here I have this walk cycle that I've drawn of this character. Okay, now currently the character is walking, in place, but I want to make the character walk across the scene. So what I can actually do is I'm going to click on the animate tool and I'm going to set position and I'm going to turn on animation. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Make sure I'm on the right layer, walk cycle. There we go. And I'm actually going to place the character all the way on the left side of my screen here. And then I'm going to set a second keyframe or an end pose that's going to be over here on the right side of the screen. So essentially there's two things going on here. There's the actual character that's animating frame to frame, and the character was basically walking in place. And then I'm having that action of walking in place animate across the scene. Okay. The way I like to think of it is like, imagine you had a television and the television was playing a movie, but the movie was on a skateboard, and the skateboard was moving. So it's like the TV is playing, but also moving at the same time, if that makes sense. And that's kind of what's happening. It's like I'm having this action of walking in place, but this whole level is actually moving across the scene. And so the end result is my character walks across the scene. So this would be a great way if you have a walk cycle and you want your character to walk across the scene really quickly. This is a great way to do that. Some people might find it easier to animate a character walking in place than walking across the scene. So, or maybe you use the walk cycle to have it walk in place in one part of your animation, and then in another scene you want it to walk across the scene. This is a great way to reuse those frames that you created. All right. Here I've kind of done the same thing. I imported my walk cycle of my complex character that I did about a couple weeks ago. And I kind of want to do the same thing. So I'm just going to I'm going to copy the character's walk cycle just a few times. So let's copy, and I'm going to paste it just to save me some time. Edit, paste. Alright, so I'm going to have my character walk across the scene. So I'm going to highlight all of this. And I'm going to start at the beginning, and I'm going to click on the animate tool and make sure I'm on the right layer, which is squirrel. Let's use position. And I'm going to click on set key. You can see my keyframe, and I'm going to put it over here, and then I'm going to have it keyframe over here. Looks like his tail disappears, but oh well, I'll worry about that later. That's not the point of this particular exercise. So when I play it back, look at that, boom. Happy squirrel walking across the scene here. All right. All right, let's do a couple more exercises when it comes to keyframing. So we've talked about, we can keyframe things, we can move it, we can scale it, we can rotate it. I could have, I don't know why I would want to do this, but I could have rotated, the character while it's moving. We can also animate the camera. Okay, so back in the day, you had like the literal frame, it was drawn on acetate, and you had the camera. And so we've been moving, you know, when I've been animating, I've been taking a frame and moving it, right? Like, oops, I think this is locked. I've been moving it, right? Or rotating it or scaling it. But we can actually take the camera itself, okay? So the difference between animating a level or animating a camera is the camera represents the entire scene. So animating the camera animates the entire scene. So imagine it like this. Imagine I have a bunch of my fingers are characters, right? Instead of having the characters move, I'm having the camera itself animate, like move or scale or rotate. And so, you know, let's say you wanted to do something where like the camera zooms in on a particular shot, or the camera pans across a scene or something like that. You could do that by animating the camera itself. So the way it works is that every timeline for every scene has a camera. Okay, mine's called camera 1 here. And by default, we haven't really done anything to affect it yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and I'm going to use the animate tool. I'm going to make sure this is set to camera 1. Okay. And I'm going to set position. And what I'm going to do is move the camera. You can tell I'm moving the camera because it says camera 1 here. It also has a little symbol of a camera. So what's actually happening here is notice how the character stays in place, but this camera, this area here, is moving. Okay, so it's kind of like, you know, if I was to take the camera and move it from left to right, the effect is it kind of makes it look like the character's walking backwards in this case. If I play it back, it's like... So, in this case, the character isn't moving. The character is just animating in place, but the camera itself is moving. Okay. So maybe I might actually do the opposite, where maybe I put the camera over here, and then I'm going to animate the camera around my character. Okay. Now, with your camera actually moving, it can be a little confusing about what is actually going to be seen. So there's a way to help with this. So the way you can do this is this, up in your upper right-hand corner, this is actually your it's called your table. It's traditionally people would draw, you know, your animators would draw on a table. This is what's actually going to be exported, this little camera. So if I click and I play that, this shows you what will actually be exported. Okay, so it's a little less confusing, I find. So if you're going to start to animate the camera, you may want to look at what is actually going to export from the camera view, as opposed to from the camera stand view. Okay. We'll do a couple more examples of this. Oops. I don't know what happened here. All right, so looks like I'm missing some things here, but I have this character who's walking. He's walking across the scene. And then I have this bird that's in a fly cycle, or essentially I just animated it flapping its wings a couple times and I repeated it. So let's just see what it looks like. I'm just going to play the animation. Okay. So what I want to do is, if you have multiple characters going on in the same scene, and let's say this was a movie, or, you know, think of this like a movie where, like, these are the characters, and I want to zoom in on them with my camera. So I could use the scale tool on both of these, but that could be awkward if they're not going at the same pace. So instead what I'm going to do is animate the camera. So I'm going to take the camera and I'm actually going to zoom in on this bird. Okay, so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to make sure, use the animate tool, make sure my camera is selected and then position. And I'm going to keyframe. Actually, I'm not going to do, let's do scale, actually, because we're going to zoom in on something. So that's actually a scale. And then what I want to do is scale it, oops. I-oh, looks like I caused it a little too much craziness there. All right, let's try that again. Camera. I'm going to set this to scale. Animate tool, make sure it's set to your camera and not one of your other levels here. And I'm going to animate. And about halfway through, I'm going to zoom in. Now it kind of looks like it's a little bit awkward, but by making the camera smaller, what I'm really doing is zooming in. Once again, you may want to go to camera view to see this. See how it's like zooming in on my characters here? They're going from smaller to larger. Okay, I know it's a little bit awkward. I'm trying to zoom in on this bird, so not only am I scaling, I do want to also change the position. Okay. So my camera now is zooming in on everything in my scene, not just the, I'm zooming in and panning the camera. So I'm going to play this back. All right. So, you know, animating the camera is great because, like I said, there may be situations where you want to move the camera, not the character. This especially happens when there's a lot going on in your scene. If I had multiple characters animating in a scene, rather than having them all blow up, you know, scaling them all for a zoom effect, I could just animate the camera as a zoom effect. You know what I mean? Or, you know, if I want to pan around my shot, you know, using the camera and panning using a position would be much easier. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of different ways we could use keyframing. Okay, so we've used keyframing to move individual objects. We can use keyframing to do more complex animation if we break down a character into subparts, or we can use keyframing to help with frame by frame or animating cameras.